Luke 5, 1 through 11 from the NRSV version. Once, while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw two boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet, if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people." When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him.
When I meet church-going strangers and they find out I'm a pastor, they frequently ask, "So how's the fishing at your church?" Okay, nobody says it that way, but they say it like this: "How big is your congregation? How many kids you got in your youth group? How many young adults come to your services? What's your average age?" Which, of course, are all more socially acceptable ways of asking, "How's fishing going for y'all?" Now, if you are already mentally answering those questions I just listed, you can likely predict that I don't always have the answers that these question askers are hoping for. In fact, my answers often elicit a response along the lines of, "Oh, well, that's okay. You seem like a pretty good guy. I'm sure you'll find a way to turn things around." Because at the heart of these questions, people are asking, how many people do you have? How big is your youth group? What's your average age? At the heart of those questions, these how's the fishing questions, feels like people are trying to find out, is your church making it? Are y'all going to survive? Well, when Simon, the future rock that Jesus would build the entire church on, first met Jesus, he was surely asking himself some survival questions too. He'd been up all night fishing. Fishing surely to feed himself and his family, and he'd caught nothing. Meaning that, like any laborer whose hard work hasn't produced anything profitable, he had to be asking, are we going to make it? Are we going to survive? When Jesus arrives and asks Simon to paddle him out into the water a little so he can address the crowd that followed him to the shore, Simon's supposed to be sleeping. He's worked all night because that's when he would have been most likely to catch fish, and since he didn't catch anything, he'll definitely be out there again that night. Now, the story doesn't say if Simon was awake or asleep when Jesus asks for his help. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that Jesus woke him up with his request. Jesus is a nice guy and everything, but he does have a reputation for being a little demanding sometimes. But I find it easiest to imagine that Jesus asks Simon because Simon is already awake. That even though Simon should be sleeping, he's awake. He's lying there like any of us who've ever had income problems. He can't quiet his mind. He's just staring up at the sky and he's cycling through his mental math. Okay, we have this much saved up. That can get us through today and maybe tomorrow. But if I don't catch anything tonight, and what if I don't catch anything tomorrow night, then what? Then what? Are we going to make it? Can we survive? Any current or retired farmer here who's gone through a drought, any sole breadwinner here who has lost their job knows why it's more than a little believable that when Jesus finds Simon, Simon, who should be sleeping, is tired as all get out, but also wide awake, stewing. Awake or asleep, when Jesus finds Simon, the thing we're told about Simon is that the thing he's doing to make it, to survive, is not going well. Now, before we take a closer look at how Jesus responded to what Simon was going through, let's pause here to ask what a concerned, cautious, maybe even sensible person might say to Simon. They might say, "Keep trying tonight. I'm sure it will go your way eventually." They might say, "You seem like a hard worker. I'm sure you'll catch more before it's too late." They might say, "I'll pray for you, that if you just keep fishing each night, eventually God will reward you." I can hear some of those things that might have been said to Simon because they're the kinds of things I hear when I answer people's questions about the fishing at AMC. "We're a church family of under 100, I say. "Well, keep looking for more converts. I'm sure it will eventually go your way," they respond. I say, "We just graduated a good group of seniors, and now we have a highly engaged high schooler and some great middle schoolers on their way up." "Well, you seem like a pretty hard worker. I'm sure you'll get more before it's too late," they respond. I say, "Our average age is pretty high. We're blessed to have a lot of older folks who are really committed to us." "Well, you just keep working hard at finding younger people, and eventually God will reward you," they say. These responses, the ones I hear and the ones I imagine that most might give Simon, are predictable. And so perhaps we should not be surprised then that they are not Jesus's response. Jesus's response is this: "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Right here, right now, in the middle of the day, put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Jesus, in other words, has it all backwards. Because if Simon wants the best odds of making up for the previous night, if Simon wants to make the safest choice in order to survive, if Simon wants to conserve his energy for the least risky approach, he should say no. Simon should say no because ultimately his survival is on the line with this job. Simon should say no because if he wants to survive, he should play the safest odds. Simon should say no because in order to be his best while playing the safe odds, he's going to need every last ounce of energy he can find that night. But perhaps in Simon, Jesus, who offers the backwards advice, finds a bit of a kindred spirit, because instead, Simon says, "Master, we have worked all night, but have caught nothing. Yet, if you say so, I will let down the nets." And the rest, as they say, is history. Simon doesn't know it yet, but Simon has just said yes to following Jesus. Simon has just said yes to becoming the foundation of the church. And in doing so, and as part of that, Simon is saying yes to an entirely new kind of fishing. Of course, as we all know, Simon has said yes to becoming a fisher of persons, as Jesus says it, but Simon has not just said yes to a new kind of catch. Simon has said yes to an entirely new way of fishing. Richard Rohr, a Franciscan friar that I know many of you read regularly, observes this: that when Jesus asks Simon to go against the prevailing common sense of when to fish, Jesus is showing him that this new life, this new church, this new community is going to have to depend on people trusting the Lord and risking the Lord's truth, even against their own temporary truth. When Jesus immediately invites Simon to follow him afterwards, Jesus is saying, "This is the only preparation for the real work I have for you, but the method will be the same. Trust over calculation, love more than power, risk instead of security." Trust over calculation, love more than power, risk instead of security. Friends, as the ones who have inherited the job of continuing to steward our church, to continue nurturing and tending to our church family, making the choices and investments today that will guide its tomorrows, Jesus arrives on our shores, just the same, saying, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Right here, right now, with what you have in this moment, put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Now, I won't lie, all those people who ask me, "How's the fishing at your church?" sometimes fill me with anxiety. make me worry about our numbers, make me fixate on our survival, which makes me cautious and careful, risk averse, sensitive to anything that could fail, fearful that we might fail too often and somehow run out of time someday. They make me want to approach our church as if it's something to be managed and controlled, to try the perfect plan and wield whatever power I and we have to push that plan forward. But while I lose sleep worrying about survival, which only produces risk-averse thinking, and while I have spent much of my life chasing after the growing mountain of advice on how to attract all the young people, only to see that each theory mostly just gives churches the illusion of control, Jesus arrives on my shore. Jesus arrives on our shore and simply says, just put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch already. Choose trust over calculation. Choose love over power. To choose risk over security. Right here, right now, in the deep waters that are right in front of you. AMC family, as I hear that call, I can't help but picture this. Myself, and maybe you feel like you're there with me, lying in my beach boat on the shore, thinking anxiously about the average age of our congregation being kind of high, worrying about taking any risks that I fear might somehow capsize us when Jesus arrives. Pretty much tricks me into getting up and getting out into the water with him, giving me some fresh story about needing my boat. And then, once we're out there a little way, turns to me and says, stop waiting. Now's the time. Get your nets ready and get over there into that deep water. And now, if you're picturing yourself, if you're picturing all of us in that boat in that moment, being pointed out to that deep water, being pointed to where things are full of untapped potential that is already with us, but that we may not have even fully realized is there, potential that we may have been avoiding for some reason because we're prioritizing security over risk. What do you see? It's an honest question. And I think we all have things to share to answer that question fully. But to get us started, I'll say this. When I peer into the depths of who we are and who we can be, I see this. In our deepest places, I see a church family that has loved and welcomed people who have felt or could feel rejected elsewhere, including in many churches. In our deepest places, I see a church family receiving and bursting with the gifts of older members, even in this modern world that obsesses over youthfulness. In our deepest places, I see a church family with deep love across all the generations, even in this world that often pits them against each other. In our deepest places, I see a church family that knows how to find unity across difference, even as so many churches are getting torn apart by politics. In our deepest places, I see a church family that provides space for its family members to safely share their honest stories with one another. Even while so many out there say that churches make them feel like they have to pretend they're perfect. In our deepest places, I see a church family that is compassionate, inclusive, generous, united, good at listening, and resilient. These are the places I see that are deepest in our church family. But as we've reflected on through today's story, I know that letting our nets down in these places can feel a little scary. As Jesus showed Peter, fishing with Jesus requires us to set aside calculation, power, and security, and to instead move forward in trust, love, and risk-taking. I know that many of us, myself included, are probably feeling some of this as our conversations about sexuality and inclusion begin. In some ways, it feels more secure not to have these conversations, right? It feels more controlled not to have these conversations. For those of us who've always had some power, it feels safest to avoid these conversations. But the truth is also that these conversations have come up because of who we already are in our deepest places. A family of safety and welcome for those who are not always safe and welcome. A family of diverse views that finds unity in a country plagued by culture wars. A family with deep intergenerational ties at a time of intergenerational angst. A family that shares and honors real, sincere storytelling. Now, of course, there's no question that While rowing our church fishing boat, our deepest waters will also sometimes end up feeling like our stormiest waters. But nevertheless, Jesus arrives saying, listen, church builders, you can keep lying on the shore, worrying about your survival, trying to play it safe. Or you can come with me right here, right now, and go to where your deepest waters are and let down your nets. Friends, when you worry that we haven't caught enough fish, when you just want to survive and are feeling averse to risk, when it's tempting to seek comfort in power and control, if thinking about things like sexuality and inclusion cause your heart to race, may you find none other than Jesus pointing you towards our deepest waters, inviting you not to overthink it, calling you to let down your net, to choose trust over calculation, love over power, and risk over security. To join Jesus' self in this next chapter of our building the church. Amen.